Okay.
Welcome, Wargamers. This is Doug, and we're continuing our coverage of the Start Collecting boxes and getting new players into them and what they can expect from them on a tabletop. And today we're going to be talking about the Clan Pestilens Start Collecting box. Alright, so this starter box comes with one Plague Claw Catapult, one Plague Furnace, a Plague Priest, which is actually on the Furnace, but you can take him off, 20 Plague Monks, and for a grand total, I believe that's about 620 points. Now, when we're talking about this box and its value, the first thing we need to really discuss is where do you plan to go with this? If you like the Clan Pestilens aesthetic and background and all that kind of stuff like that, and that's something you want to pursue exclusively, like just pick just Clan Pestilens, then flat out buy 3 of these and a Verminlord Corruptor. You can't go wrong, okay? It's so much monetary value packed into this box, it's unreal. That's just the no-brainer choice. It's important to remember that if you deviate, if you add even one model that's not a Clan Pestilens model, then it nullifies the monks being a battle line choice. Now that's important because that means if you add one thing, you need to add at least 2 to 3 more battle line units depending on which size of game you want to play. This is something I really hope that gets cleared up in the General's Handbook Round 2, where they kind of reevaluate what's a battle line and what's not. It's also important to note that when you're building your list, the General's Handbook has Plague Monks in increments of 10, but you get 20 no matter how you buy them. They always come in a box of 20. So that's just something to keep in mind when you're doing the math inside your head. You can accidentally short yourself, so just don't do that. Okay, so that's kind of the nitty-gritty out of the way as far as... But let's just say you wanted to stick with Clan Pestilens. How does this box actually do? Well, the answer is very, very well. It's not a top-tier competitive army. I'll be honest with you, if you look at the War Scrolls, all your basic troops don't have a save, okay? This is the ultimate glass hammer army. You can reach a point where your Plague Monks are hitting the enemy with almost 5 extra attacks, okay? It's insanity. You can do so much with that, but there's almost no rend, and... again, nothing has a save, so these things are going to start breaking, like running away from battle shock, and then just dying in droves. I mean, it's going to be pretty crazy, if I'm being honest. The thing that keeps them in the game, though, is that they function a lot like the Devoted of Sigmar in Order, which is to say that it's a lot of troops that die to a stiff breeze, but they have a lot of these big models that support them. The Plague Furnace itself is a monster of a model. It gets bonuses from being surrounded by Plague Monks, and so it comes in and it does D6 mortal wounds to an enemy within 3 inches. I think you pick a point in, maybe it's 2 inches, put that down, and then anything in that range gets damaged with D6 mortal wounds. It's a monster of a thing. That doesn't even include the fact that it charged and has its own normal attacks. All the while you're being rained on by Plague Claw Catapults coming out of the back. They have a rend -2 on all of their shots. You know, you each only get 1 shot per turn, though. There are formations where you can, Battalion War Scrolls, where you can kind of buff that up a little bit and make that a little more effective. But on the whole, you're looking at basic line troops that are going to surge forward and hit the enemy incredibly hard, right? Glass hammer. Hit them really, really hard and then disintegrate almost immediately. And then you're going to have your big linchpin models behind them, a couple of Plague Furnaces being supported by Plague Claw Catapults. Now, keep in mind, there are no wizards in this army if you go exclusively Clan Pestilens. You do, however, have 3 priests, because you have 2 different kinds of priests, right? There's one with a warp tip staff, which I think is the one you get in the box, one with a censer bearer, and then if you count the Plague Furnace, he rules-wise has a priest on him. I suggest taking that priest off and using him as a separate entity. Kind of bumps the point level of the box up, and he's not really necessary on the Plague Furnace. That thing looks so impressive with that big ball. It's whatever. You're not missing out on anything. Point being, there are no wizards. You have these heroes level things that perform prayers. This is, I think, was one of the first armies to really emphasize the difference between magic and prayers in this Age of Sigmar setting, which I think is phenomenal, okay? And the way prayers work is you roll a die, and if it's a 3 or higher, you get what you want. If it's a 1, the priest takes a wound. And so the prayers debuff your enemy, buff your own guys. The catapult, I'm sorry, not the catapult, the furnace, Plague Claw Furnace, does one where he gives more attacks, things like that. So they do a lot in-game to manipulate what's happening with the monks. Let's talk about them monks for a second. You're going to want a lot, okay? Like, if you, I don't know, if I'm talking about suggestions for buying into a purely Pestilence thing, I'd say pick up 2 Start Collecting boxes and then maybe 2 extra boxes of just monks, right? Because that would give you 2, 4, 6, 8, 80 monks. Yeah, totally. You're going to burn through that in a heartbeat. Like I said, they run in and then they just burn. So what's also great about Plague Monks is they're so integral to the army because in a lot of armies, you'll see troop units that say when they're within 8 inches of a hero, for example, you know, of that faction's hero, they get a buff, right? Maybe +1 to hit or reroll or whatever. In Pestilens, the bonuses are really centered around their basic unit, the monks. So the Censer Bearers, which are the elite, as elite get, of the monks, which is you get 5 of them, they have a rend on their weapon. They're basically monks, but with a better weapon, and a lot fewer of them. They get a bonus for being near monks. The Plague Furnace, that huge hulking smash thing, gets a speed bonus and a charge bonus for being near monks. And so the synergy is that everything makes the singular unit of the monks better, right? So they can be the glass hammer, and that they in turn buff everything else to be better themselves. So you can kind of see though that this machine is incredible, but it falls apart the second those monks start dying. And that's kind of the challenge of the army is, how do I keep the monks alive long enough to make their attacks? Well, how do I keep them long enough to buff everyone else, and then still also do the damage that they need to do with everyone buffing them? It's not going to be an easy army to play. It's actually why I kind of chose it. And so you're going to see a lore video coming up here pretty soon about them. I'm really excited to explore them. They do have this really cool position, I think, in the Chaos Army, which is Skaven in the lore, if you didn't know, have recently come to prominence with the Horned Rat, which is their deity, taking his seat amongst the Chaos Gods. And so they're in this weird position where they're Skaven, so they're kind of bound to the Horned Rat, but also they're very Nurgle, right? They're so infused with Nurgle, and so it creates this great almost dichotomy of like where they belong inside the universe. If you're looking to expand and you don't want to stick with exclusively Pestilence, I'm going to be honest with you, there's not as much value in this box. Again, the monks aren't battle line to start with. They're only battle line if you take only Pestilence. So you get in this weird position where everything else in the box relies on the monks and buffs the monks, but if they're not battle line, then you have to put a lot of something else. Well, if you're putting a lot of something else, why wouldn't you just put more monks? And so it kind of feeds in on itself. And if you just like the aesthetics of it and you want to play it on the table, that's awesome. I suggest the Slaves to Darkness box. I'm going to come back to this box a lot. It's a phenomenal box, as we discussed in another video. If you haven't seen it, go check that one out. But my point being that this box is phenomenal for what it is in its faction. If you deviate too far out of that, you need to really work at the synergies to make that happen. Taking another step back, if you buy this box and you don't want to stick with Clan Pestilence exclusively, remember that the Plague Claw Catapult can also become a Warp Lightning Cannon, which is a super legitimate piece of artillery, and that the Plague Furnace can become the Screaming Bell. You have all the parts in you to do that. So if you want, even if you wanted to do just a general Skaven army, right? Yeah, this is still a great box. Buy 2 of them. You can buy, you know, have a little like Pestilence contingent and then have fill your battle line up with like Skaven slaves or clan rats or whatever, just the normal basic troop. You know, have 3 units of those guys and then a Screaming Bell behind them with a Grey Seer on top, and you can actually do some really, really cool things. I hope this video has been helpful to you. If you'd like to check out the Clan Pestilence box in more detail, click the link below. That brings you over to the 2+ Tough store. We are an Amazon affiliate store. We don't sell our own products, but we basically, anytime you purchase anything there, I get a small cut of it, which goes to support me as a content producer, help us out with camera, sound, lighting, and things like that. I would really appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching, and happy wargaming.